Now, look, it's also been a few weeks since the hostages were released and a ceasefire came into effect. How are locals feeling post-war? What are they telling you?
So the Israelis are like us, Danica. They value life above everything else, and nearly every corner, every roundabout that you see across the whole country is draped in yellow flags as a symbol of the hostages. So the bringing home of the hostages was such a critical element in the ceasefire talks, and President Trump has been successful in making sure that all the living hostages have been released. It's a little bit bittersweet, though, Danica, because whilst the country is in the process of healing and it is overjoyed with the return of the living hostages, there are some double-digit number of deceased hostages that are still yet to be released. Hamas had given their promises that they would be, and they haven't been. Some may claim that, according to Hamas, there's a few bodies that are too hard to find. I dare say that this is a Hamas delaying tactic to, again, psychologically, damage the Israeli citizenry in delaying the release of these hostages. So whilst there's joy and elation at the live hostages coming back, there are still a number of families, Danica, where their loved ones, their bones and their bodies are still somewhere deep underground in Gaza waiting for a proper burial and some closure for those families as well. So it's a bit bittersweet. The other bittersweet element is that whilst the ceasefire remains mostly in play, the Israelis know Hamas better than anybody. So in terms of the other parts of the other phases of the Trump peace plan that still need to come to fruition, namely the disarming of Hamas and the installation of a new governing body that does not include Hamas, is going to be a very big up-road battle from here.
Well, I was going to ask you about that because, you mentioned families who are grieving the fact that their deceased loved ones have not been returned from Gaza. You've got other families whose young people are in Gaza as part of the IDF, hoping that this peace will hold and that they don't have to go back in to try to disarm Hamas. How likely is it that Hamas will agree to disarm? Do Israelis really hold that hope, or are most of them thinking this is a pause before more fighting will continue?
Well, if you look what Hamas has done, Hamas is leveraging off this pause in fighting to regroup. So they're out in the streets, patrolling the streets with force. They're summarily executing a number of Palestinians. Not that I see any protests in the streets of Melbourne and Sydney condemning those actions. But Hamas is reasserting itself in about half of the strip that Israeli soldiers are not currently located. In the other half, where Israel's buffer zone is and a number of Palestinian civilians still remain. My hope is that the elements of the Trump peace plan in terms of redevelopment, a new trained Palestinian police force, as well as, the potential for an international stabilization force, that even if Hamas controls a certain element of the strip, that in the parts that it does not control, that the plan can go into action. That will do two things. That will obviously increase the standards for those that are under Israeli protection, but under the control of the International Stabilization Force, as well as this Board of Peace that President Trump will be the director of, without the need of completely defeating Hamas. What that also means is that Hamas will be isolated, but still maintain some type of control over the strip. Now, unfortunately, Israelis know Hamas all too well. They know that there's very minimal percentage chance that they are going to disarm. And if they do, they will do it strategically, where they might be able to transition to what's called the Hezbollah model, meaning being a paramilitary force controlling certain sections of the territory whilst not being a participant in the government. So they still maintain their control, but they satisfy the Western audiences to say that they're not in control of the government. So these are the type of things that are going to work their way out over the next couple of months. But in the Australian context, Anthony Albanese has promised a lot here. He's made conditions and he's received promises from the Palestinian Authority, all of which that I don't believe that he will receive. The question is, does the Prime Minister stay true to his word and steadfast in his word by those conditions, or does he weaken and melt away those conditions and just accept the new status quo? I think it's going to be the latter, unfortunately, not the former, but time will tell.
Yeah, I guess we'll wait and see what happens. It's still a very precarious situation, but naturally everybody is really hoping for the best. Joel Burney, always appreciate your insights. Thank you very, very much for joining us on the show live from Israel this evening. Really appreciate it.
Thank you both.
Thank you. Thank you.